Good evening and welcome to the Monday Agenda. Today, the Monday Agenda is celebrating 25 years of Repoa since its establishment here in Tanzania. With me is the Executive Director of Repoa, Dr. Donald Murray. Please welcome to the show and congratulations on such a milestone.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So 25 years since Repoa came into picture. How would you say the journey has been since its establishment?
I would say generally the journey has been successful. It has evolved as an institution, just as the country has evolved in many fronts, looking at the structure of its economy, the size of the population, governance systems and structures. So Repoa has also evolved from a very small time-bound program into an institution that is recognized not only within the boundaries of the country, but also within the region, as well as internationally.
Okay. Maybe my viewers would really be interested to know, we've seen Repoa left, right, and center, but specifically Repoa as a research institution. What are your mandates? What is it that you do? Where are your areas of focus in research?
I think it will help to give a little bit of history to it.
Absolutely.
Because that's
celebrating 25 years.
Yes. When Repoa was established it was registered in 1994, but it started operating in 1995. That explains the 25 years. But it was established then because the key stakeholders of development in the country then recognized that there was very minimum capacity in doing policy research, particularly in these areas of poverty alleviation, in terms of trying to understand the causes of poverty, the consequences, the typologies of poverty, and the strategies to alleviate or address it. So that was the consensus. That was after the experiences of the various economic reforms and structural adjustment programs of the mid-80s and early 90s that saw the economy beginning to transform, but poverty was actually deepening. So there was a need then to establish a program that will focus on strengthening policy research capacity in that area. So by that time, the program was named Research on Poverty Alleviation, which translated into the name Repoa. So the mandate of Repoa then became focused on undertaking policy research, dialogue and capacity building, particularly in the area of poverty and public policy analysis. But of course, that mandate have changed and has evolved over time. As soon as Repoa began to succeed in providing policy advice based on its research, in generating a critical mass of researchers doing work around poverty, it was clear that poverty is better analyzed in a broader sense.
Correct.
Because you need, for example, to ensure that the economy is growing and growing in a sustainable manner. Therefore, there are sectors that must drive growth, and a sustained growth can then trickle down into the welfare of the people, and therefore see poverty being reduced. So rather than thinking of direct interventions into social sectors, you will need then to intervene strategically to ensure that the economy is growing, and that growth is becoming broad-based. So then we began studying, doing research and capacity building in areas that are not directly poverty, but substantively important and critical for poverty reduction, including the issues around economic growth, issues around governance, issues around social protection, all which intertwine to ensure that the economy is robust and poverty reduces. So we then, even the name of Repoa changed from Research on Poverty Alleviation to just Repoa. Because Repoa was already established brand in research and capacity building. And therefore, we thought it's easy to communicate to our stakeholders and say, look, we have broadened our mandate, but Repoa still remains the institutional name. And that continued as we continued to innovate our approach, to review our research program every 5 years, because the economy and the welfare function in any country is dynamic. So as soon as things evolved, then we identify where knowledge gap still exists to inform policy, and therefore we refine new research agenda. Currently, we are focusing on promoting, as our mission states, we are seeking to promote socio-economic transformation that delivers inclusive development. And that's where you will see poverty reducing, you'll see wealth creation, where you see clusters of people emerging, small enterprises growing and transforming, and eventually moving towards the path of middle income status, and eventually. So that's really how our mandate has evolved over time.
Congratulations. Doctor, it's challenging to even think, and this is a general observation from the community, and I'm happy that we're having this discussion now, that we speak about Tanzania transforming or growing to lower middle income state. We're looking onto economic growth. We're looking onto all the beautiful numbers that the country has had over the years, saying that we've actually economically grown. But the translation of growth, or the translation of poverty eradication onto individual pockets, is not yet felt. Probably things are more difficult now than then. Probably things are more expensive now than then. How is this communicated externally? Because we speak about growth from lower to middle income state in the country. We speak about economic growth. I think one of the fastest growing economies in Africa is Tanzania. But if you look onto a normal Mwananchi, they would still complain that, economic hardships, this and that. How do research address or translate these, what would I call them? I wouldn't really wish to call them complaints, but how is that statement translated in research?
I would say generally that it's not really the first time we have had difficulties in trying to understand the link between macro economy on one hand and the micro economy on the other.
Correct.
That is the link between the economic growth, represented by numbers, and the outcomes in terms of poverty reduction. But there are clearly many factors that explain that perceived discrepancy, mismatch between economic growth numbers and macro and micro. And that's not the case. That case is not unique to Tanzania. It's global. Even if you look at countries that are actually in the OECD, they have the per capita incomes, exceeding $30,000-$40,000. That means they are, in the high income. There are also people there that are considered living below the poverty line. That's poor people. It's because the economic dynamics really includes what are the sectors that are growing. How are these sectors broad-based? How are the distribution of wealth between wage earners, the owners of capital in terms of returns to capital, owners of land, including in terms of rent and so forth. How does it work? Okay. So there are issues there of inequality. Of course, you can, and you will clearly see that in many countries that have a very high GDP per capita, they have also very high levels of inequality. Yeah. So that wealth is concentrated among very few people.
Very few hands.
And that's not really the case for Tanzania. In Tanzania, while of course there are elements of growing inequality, which is typical of any economy that is growing, you will clearly see maybe returns to capital increasing faster than returns to labor and so forth. There you will begin to see these kinds of inequality, which are natural to the process of economic transformation. But the state then requires actions to minimize these kinds of inequalities. For the case of Tanzania, which you've just asked, the GDP, which is the starting point for measuring the per capita income, is the totality of economic activities. Correct. Yeah, all the quantities of activities undertaken in all sectors of the economy, yeah, valued at either current prices or a certain base period, which you will decide to measure as a base so that you can compute it in real term or in monetary term. Divide by the population. Yes. And if it exceeds a certain threshold, then it already qualifies you to the next level, as it has been the case for Tanzania. But that does not mean that all people in all the citizens have the same amount of per capita of income. So others have gained by income, others have. But others, the numbers also tells that there's probably a vast increase in the quantity of capital employed in various projects, gross fixed capital formation, investment in major infrastructures that are significant and important for long-term development. Yes. All those counts for the size of economic activity.
The challenge, Dr. Mari, is the fact that people, majority of Tanzanians who are doctor for one reason or the other, cannot translate the economic growth of the country in relation to personal incomes. We are looking on to major projects coming into the country. We're looking onto the Stigler's coach. We're looking onto the rapid transit. We're looking onto the flyovers. We're looking onto the road infrastructure, etc., etc. The translation of this macroeconomic parameters onto individual gains, for instance. Maybe you can elaborate that.
I was going to go there.
That's good.
I was going to say that it's a combination of the infrastructure that you just mentioned, but there is more. Look at the volume of economic activities in the sectors of agriculture. If you look at the numbers, for example, the acreage under crop production 20 years ago are not the same as today. There has been significant area expansion.
I would totally agree with you.
There has been growth in the volume of output of different crops.
Yes.
All those also contributes to the volume of to the GDP number that we are seeing.
But doctor, if you recall from the budget that we are in 2020-2021, the least. Actually, it's 2019-2020. The least contributing sector was in the agriculture.
As a share.
As a share, yes.
Because the value of other sectors are growing. Yeah.
Yes.
It's not that the volume of economic activity in agriculture is necessarily declining, but the volume and value of other sectors are also growing.
Correct.
Yeah. Because look at the population that is engaged in agriculture. Yeah, 65% of the labor force still engaged in agriculture. You will not dispute that much as we say agricultural productivity is still low.
Yeah.
But 65% of nearly 50 million people are producing in agriculture. That must not be discounted. So there could be a tendency of people to look at the percentage growth of the sector, which is less than 5%. But that does not mean the sector is not growing and the volume is not part of the growth story in terms of GDP story. But also look at the number of tourists that have been coming to Tanzania over the last 20 years. They have been growing in numbers, but also in their expenditure per tourist. You have seen that as a result, there are many more hotels. There are many more, except this year where, of course, the situation has been COVID-related. But overall, this sector has been growing, and its contribution to exports have grown dramatically to nearly quarter of foreign exchange. So there are a totality of many other sectors have been growing. Now, how does this translate into people's pockets?
Correct.
I think that's where people begin to look at a single indicator.
Okay.
And this indicator is income poverty.
Yes.
Which is measured as a consumption of people for a basket of goods. Yeah. Yeah. And then you define from it a poverty line against which you measure how many people are below or above. Yeah. But generally, despite the fact that a lot of technicalities are put into these estimates of people's income using the collection of households, on their annual consumption during the survey period. Still, these are estimates. But there are many other indicators which are very basic that you could use for people to really translate whether there's been a difference or not over the last 20 years. Correct. And I'll give you examples. Yes. If you tour the country, both rural and urban, you clearly see emergence of a lot of peri-urban areas. Correct. That actually comes with a lot of trade activities and raised income. Yeah. You clearly see the number of people whose houses are constructed by bricks, roofed by tins, have increased dramatically. Yes, they have. You will see a number of different assets that people could not own. Average Tanzania. Yeah. Motorcycles, bicycles, radios, mobile phones. All those are income proxies that people don't really relate very easily. And this is happening in urban areas, it's happening in rural areas. And these are becoming transformative over time. Yeah. Now, people tend to look at just one indicator, cash income. But if you ask them, how did you accrue those kinds of assets, which were impossible to speak of 20 years ago, unless you are a ward executive officer, unless you are really medium income trader, shop owner who was able to buy a motorcycle to ferry stuff. So clearly, if we look at all these, I would say, easy indicators for everyone to see, not necessarily the numbers that someone has to do all the calculation and say, this is the income poverty. Absolutely. So I would look at many other parameters to be able to tell whether we have moved from one level of the economy to another, rather than just income. Okay. Because otherwise, if you look at the numbers, you can say even in America, because there are a lot of poor people indeed, people who live below the poverty line, people who have no income to depend on, then you can say, well, maybe they have not reached that level. So there are many other parameters I would urge people to look at, rather than just cash income, because that's just one indicator. of development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've answered me very well, Doctor, and I'm going to be an advocate for that. Doctor, for the past 25 years into research, into policy, what are some of the key policy dialogues that you've initiated, that you've spearheaded as an institution for the past 25 years? So not necessarily during your tenure, but for the past 25 years of Repoa.
I can say that we are very proud generally of how we have managed to convince the different stakeholders, not just the government, but others, development partners, civil society organizations, private sector, and others, that research does matter. And therefore, we have seen quite some significant level of uptake, increasing over time.
Yeah.
And I would like to use 2 or 3 examples. The first one dates back from the time that the first poverty reduction strategy was developed in the context of the reforms that were taking place towards the end of the mid-90s, just around time when it was being established, and early 2000.
Yeah.
The poverty reduction strategy paper that was connected with the highly indebted poor countries initiatives. When this strategy document was launched, the stakeholders, including the governments, found it necessary to have a monitoring system that will inform all the stakeholders of how the poverty reduction strategy is being implemented and what are the outcomes on the ground.
Yeah.
And we participated very closely in the monitoring process.
Okay.
We were appointed to be the secretary to the Research and Analysis Working Group of the National Poverty Monitoring System. And that became an important avenue to provide feedback to the government and the other stakeholders on an annual basis, how the program was being implemented. And towards the end of that strategy, of that poverty reduction strategy, Repoa was convinced, based on the analysis, that we needed a new strategy that will focus not just on social sectors, but on key productive sectors, so that it could leverage growth, important to sustain the poverty reduction momentum in the country. So that message was discussed in different dialogue, and it was clearly and widely agreed that the next generation strategy for fighting poverty should actually combine initiatives and interventions to deliver on growth. So we came in as a nation with the next generation strategy that was called National Strategy for Growth and Reduction of Poverty. So that really, I'm very proud that we participated in that process, and that feedback loop between research, the dialogue, and policy development delivered a change. And since then, you could see that there has been a lot of emphasis on promoting growth. You have seen a lot of, have seen outcome in terms of the country sustaining very high growth momentum compared to many other countries in Africa and in the East African region. And that has translated into subsequent 5-year development plans, which also emphasize not just poverty reduction, but importantly, how it is important to sustain growth momentum, transforming the economy from depending on the primary sectors into also secondary sectors that actually drive the economic dynamism. We are very proud of that. That was the first one. The second one in this area of local government reform.
Correct.
When the local government reform program was first initiated towards the end of 1990s, after the decentralization policy paper of 1998, Repoa'S immediately came out with a research program called the Formative Research Program on Local Government Reform. And this research was following up on the reforms, seeking to understand how the reform process was delivering the expected process in the devolution, seeking to transfer powers and functions from the central government to the local government. And this program was feeding and informing the managers of the reform program then, and the government in general. And we could see the transformation that was taking place over the period of 10 years.
Correct.
In which we were implementing that program.
Okay.
And we clearly see the decentralized environment. Now we talk of 185 local government authorities.
Yes.
Running a lot of primary health and education services, spearheading people-centered approach where people elect their own councils, and these councils manage their plans and so forth. So really, that process of decentralization, and which we have continued also to do research, and to promote the idea of deepening the role of local government authorities in promoting local economic development, are actually being accepted.
Correct.
And now being translated into the government policies. So I can really say that over the last 25 years, as an institution, yes, we have made a difference.
Wonderful. You are watching the Monday Agenda, and the Monday Agenda today is celebrating 25 years of Repoa, 25 since its establishment back in 94, but it started operations in 1995. And with me is the Executive Director of Repoa, Dr. Donald Murray. And we are looking onto this journey, which has actually transformed not only the organization, but the country as a whole, considering that, you know, when Repoa was initially established, it was looking onto poverty eradication, poverty alleviation, but now it's broadened its horizon, and this is the focus of the program. Dr. Murray, 25 years is quite a substantive period. So first and foremost, congratulations to have, you know, sustained all the stones, all the, you know, hills and valleys and mountains to date. What are some of the challenges? But I wouldn't really wish to call them challenges. I would really rather call them lessons, you know, that emanated from the challenges that you faced that really made you stand where you are today, celebrating your 25 years.
I think a major lesson is that perhaps three major lessons. One is the fact that institutional development requires commitment.
Correct.
That's very important. A commitment of the leadership, commitment of the people that work for the organization, but also the commitment from different stakeholders. That includes the government, the people that are participating in different programs, the various partners that support the institution, because in some cases, some partners could feel fatigued and say, no, we've kept funding this organization, but when will it stop being independent and so forth? That's so that commitment is important. And I think secondly is for growth to happen, you have to continue focusing. You have to continue focusing. You have to continue to deliver quality. You have to continue to pursue your mission, irrespective of the challenges that you come across, while trying to overcome them. There have been definitely some challenges in the context of every time there's changing operating socio-political environment.
Yeah.
Then you have to be innovative in terms of responding and adjusting your operations so that they fit within the operating environment as they change.
Okay.
That flexibility is important. Trying to scan your environment ahead of time trying to see what is coming, so that you can prepare. The agility to understand and be able to prepare yourself to respond to the changing environment.
Correct.
The last issue I think I would like to speak of is the funding.
funding.
And funding challenges faces many think tanks in Africa. Unlike think tanks in other parts of the world, particularly in the north, because in Africa we have very limited funding from the private sector. Private sector funding, that's one example. Private sector funding to research is small compared to other countries, other world, which actually provides a lot of support to endowments, but also directly fund R&D as an important part of knowledge generation, innovation, and discovery of new markets, new products, new processes and systems and so forth. But secondly, even government funding, the government spending as a share of research and development in many African countries, including Tanzania, is still relatively low.
If at all it is there.
Yeah, it is
not,
there.
Not theoretically.
It is there.
It is.
But it's very, very low.
10%?
That has not been reached.
Yes.
As the government in the past had promised, they have not been reached. So it's relatively low. So a lot of think tanks of our type have had to depend for a long time on development partners.
Correct.
And that is not very good for sustainability.
Correct.
Institutional sustainability also requires commitment of internal stakeholders to recognize the importance of research so that they can set aside funding, they can set aside endowments and foundations that can actually support research, which is essentially public good. It's very difficult to go out there and to start selling research reports, publications, books, you know. These are essentially public goods that are meant to support various development stakeholders when designing development interventions, development priorities, and therefore putting a price tag on them becomes quite difficult. So absolutely. If our outputs are essentially public good in nature, some public funding to support research activities and capacity building and these kinds of dialogue and sharing of this output is important.
Especially sharing of output.
Yeah?
Especially
sharing of output. And doing research itself. Research is expensive. Research is not simple process of collecting data here and there, putting it quickly. You have to think, you have to read, you have to understand what research is telling you, you have to understand the methods of undertaking different pieces of analysis, you have to put context in it, you have to research, collect data, you have to triangulate information so that you come out with facts and knowledge that is novel to help shape the development processes. It is expensive.
It is.
Yeah.
Doctor, one of the challenges, I wouldn't call it a myth, but one of the challenges that is perceived out there is the fact that if we receive funds from development partners, of course they come with a tag, they come with parameters, they come with limitation. It is, again, as I said, it is perceived that, you know, certain agents would give you so much funds to do so much studies, but then they would limit you to go to a certain level or threshold. Is that true, and how does that affect the output of the study?
I can say that we are very lucky, for example, during the period of our existence, we have worked with many partners. Since the inception of the program, when the Dutch government took a special interest into the program, they were the sole funders of the program. And subsequently, we have had many other partners that we have engaged with, the UK government, the government of Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Ireland, through their embassies. They have taken particular interest in providing core support that is flexible, that allows us to implement our own strategic plan. But of course, when we develop our strategic plan, our research program, we involve a number of stakeholders to say, look, these are the priorities that we see based on the context, based on the research that we have done in the past, based on the changing global conditions, other dynamics including population, dynamics, technology, and so forth. We believe these are the areas that have research gaps. We believe these are the areas that we need to provide new knowledge, and we share with them and ask for their support, and oftentimes they have responded well to our own institutionally grown priority areas, and seldom has there really been efforts to divest us from our own programs. Unfortunately, of course, sometimes the fundings are not enough. Sometimes they fluctuate, with uncertainties here and there. That's the challenge. But in terms of attempt to derail us from our independence
or influencing
our work, that has seldom been the case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doctor, as you're talking, bringing the issues of funding into research, I was asking myself, and I'm sure my viewers would also be asking themselves, is Repoa a private entity, or is it a public entity, or is it a quasi organization?
I don't know how to define it, but I can say it's an independent, non-profit organization that was established by members who had a common interest in pursuing research, capacity building, and development objectives in the areas of our mandate, and supported by various domestic and international funders, mainly representing public funding from the different respective countries of support. So that's how I would describe it.
It's not an organization. It's not a public organization. It's not the government organization.
I could say it's non-government.
Yeah.
But if we define public,
it confines it there.
It confines it as a public interest organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Doctor. If I ask you 25 years from today, how do you see Repoa? It will be too long of a time. But for me, it's really to wish Repoa celebrate another 25 years from today. So 5 years from today, how does Repoa look?
I think it looks very prospective. One, because increasingly the key stakeholders are supportive, are accepting that knowledge is important. As our new logo shows there, knowledge is power. We have continued to make the point that knowledge is power. They are realizing that the country, the region, and the globe is facing a number of complex scenarios which comes to play together. The demographics are changing. Technology is evolving very rapidly. Population is growing. Population is becoming more urbanized. The global trade governance is changing and shifting rapidly. All this requires some kind of knowledge to siphon how to operate and to meet independent national objectives, but as well as regional objectives in terms of regional integration. To be able to achieve these results, you need knowledge, you need very quick fact checks, you need analysis, and therefore they are continuing to support research. They have shown interest in using research, which is more important, and we have also integrated in our 5-year plan efforts to strengthen evidence-informed policy-making processes through capacity building, through dialogue, through our dissemination strategies, using also the state-of-the-art tools, including social media, to reach as much beneficiaries, which now includes young people, which constitute over 60% of the population. So I really believe that Going forward, Repoa will continue to grow, will continue to expand its sphere of influence through knowledge and evidence, which is quite critical, and hope that with the upcoming generation of young people, some of whom are pursuing different research, knowledge-related activities, will join the institution and propel it for another 25 years.
Absolutely. Maybe before we wind up the program, Professor, my very last question. We are in a country that embraces industrial development towards becoming a middle-income state. Where do you see Repoa on that vision?
I think as our mission again suggests, is Repoa seeks to undertake research, to promote dialogue, and to promote capacity in ways that we will see accelerated socioeconomic transformation. And that actually requires not just transformation of the structure of the economy, but also the soft part of it in terms of skills development. And of course, we would support the argument that industrial transformation, industrial development, the structural change that are driven by industries, which includes value addition to many other primary sectors, is key to ensuring that the economy becomes more sustainable. But of course, we need to understand that the type of industries that we promoted 20, 30 years ago are not the same industries and the same model that will apply from now going forward.
Correct.
Because they are driven by knowledge, they are driven by technology, they are driven by skills. And that's where our role seems to be focusing next.
Absolutely. And you may recall the famous words by the late president of Tanzania, Benjamin Mkapa, used to say, and I really take this as a takeaway for our discussion, that no research, no right to speak. So if you want to really be able to design economy, run countries, run projects, run programs, research remains key. And research gives you information, and information remains power, and that's what Repoa is advocating. So for me, I really am celebrating the 25 years. Congratulations, and thank you so much for coming onto the Monday Agenda, and we wish you very well, all the very best. Thank you for watching the Monday Agenda, and thank you so much once again, Dr. Donald Murray. I'm your host, Austin Makani. Until next time, keep watching the Monday Agenda.